Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., all rights reserved.
He's the man Talkers Magazine says is one of the most important talk show hosts in America.
We tell you over and over again that you're wonderful, and you just don't get it. What's wrong with you?
He's Jim Blasingame, our small business advocate.
Thank you for hanging out with me. Thanks for being part of my day. Mr. Wonderful at your service. Always a pleasure. If you just tuned in, welcome aboard. We're glad you did that. If you've been listening already, we consider that a sign of high intelligence. You're going to get smarter because our good friend Bill Brandt is back on the show. Bill is the president and chief executive officer of Development Specialists, Inc. His organization helps companies solve a lot of serious problems, not only in America but around the world. But he's also one of our Democrat representatives. You know, we had Rich Galen on just a couple of days ago. He's one of our top Republican operatives, and Bill's very connected to the Democrat Party, and so we try to be fair and balanced here in the Small Business Advocate Show. Bill Brandt, welcome back to the show.
Well, good morning, Jim. Nice to be here as always.
It's good to have you back. Hey, Bill, I want you to do us a favor in this first segment and give us your best report on not only the U.S. economy but the global economy. We're still trying to wash these 20th century, these toxins that we've acquired in the last 10 years and in the last 60, 70 years, these toxins that we got to wash through our system. What do you see?
Well, I think the best way to do it is to start with the global economy and then come down to ours, because indeed the global economy is probably going to have the largest effect near term on us. It is clear, and I'm headed back overseas to Dubai and then to Tehran, Iran, early next month. By that I mean November. So for speeches at various locales, and it's clear to me that the Europeans are not truly getting their act together. They are trying, I'll give them that, but it doesn't look good. And I think that the markets in the U.S. have generally called it right with respect to the now not unreasonable expectation that Greece will default on its bonds, and it's not a question of if but when. Even if there is some, and it might be a soft landing default where people arrange a default and they have some bailout. But
it needs to be so it doesn't cause the contagion, right?
Well, I actually take the opposite tack. It may well cause the contagion. You know, people are petrified of defaulting on their sovereign bonds for the reaction they may get in world markets. But if one gets away with it and does a soft landing, especially in a very advanced economy, in a very advanced sector like Greece, then what it leads to Portugal and Italy is interesting, and what investors will do with regard to trying to bail out of those investments, fearing they may be next. But however you see the cards falling, it's not a good thing. I will not argue with you that Greece has to have a solution. Whether continued safety nets under Greece will only encourage their spendthrift ways is another story. But leaving that aside, the United States, whose economy is very fragile. I think I said to you a year ago, and we talked about this 2 years ago, that this wasn't a V or a U. We went down the deep end of a bathtub.
This is a marathon.
And we were going to bounce along on the bottom for a long time. We're doing that, and it's not going well, and we're very much near a double dip in recession. And if there's a European problem, it's not just the financial markets that are affected. Jim, we sell a lot of products to Europe. From agriculture to industrial products. And as the Europeans deal with those kind of financial problems and pull in their own spending, it's going to affect us. And it would certainly lead to another recession. If we're not already in one, it will lead to one. If we're slightly in one, which is what I tend to think, it will deepen it measurably. But we're on the verge of a pretty difficult time. There's no doubt about it.
And you see that for the next 2 years, 5 years?
3.5 years. I think 2014 is the time. And for your listeners, I would tell them, they say, well, what do I do? Run lean. I mean, that's the two words I give to everybody. If you're folks who depend on ordering inventory for sales, really take a hard look at the inventory. Do you really need it all? Do you really want to have to sell it at half price later on when it's not moving? I mean, run your business lean. better to turn away orders or back order than to try and have everything for everybody when they're not going to be buying it.
Right. Yeah. Well, are you? A lot of people are worried about another Lehman event, which is basically what tipped us into the financial crisis of literally 3 years ago. Right now, do you see a Lehman event out there, especially in Europe?
Yes, I suspect that the Lehman event in Europe will be the failure of one or more of the large or semi-large European banks. And I am desperately worried about the banks in Spain, the banks in Greece, but Spain seems to be the one where at the end of the last fiscal year, some of the larger banks were reporting a 10% loan, deficiency or delinquency, which is not great but manageable.
So you think the banks are going to happen before? You think the bank Lehman events could happen before, say, Italy defaulting would happen?
It could all. It could lead to the default. It could happen as a proximate cause of the default. Yeah. But that's the issue. The banks are on the verge.
All right, folks. You heard it right here. 20 till. We're going to be right back. I want to talk about how President Obama's doing these days. Stay with us.
Insperity presents the Small Business Advocate Show with Jim Blasingame, brought to you by FedEx, CareerBuilder.com, and Palo Alto Software. This is a copyrighted production of Small Business Network, Inc., intended for the private use of our audience. Except as otherwise provided by copyright law, all other copying, redistribution, or publication without prior written consent is prohibited. All rights reserved. Prohibited. All rights reserved. Prohibited.